So you'd like to draft using metric units. Well, in the big scheme of things, I'm afraid there's a little more to drafting in metric than merely changing our unit settings. The first thing we need to understand is that AutoCAD by default is set to an imperial drafting environment. Now I'm currently at my desktop. I'm going to come over and launch the AutoCAD application. Let's double click on the icon. When my AutoCAD opens up on screen, I can see that by default we are sitting in a blank drawing, drawing1.dwg. AutoCAD always defaults to a blank drawing. Let's go to our units dialog and see what our units are set to. I'm going to come up to Format. I'm going to come down to Units. And by default, this thing is set to inches. Now, if we wanted to use metric units, we could always click the drop down and select millimeters or centimeters or meters, whatever we like. Unfortunately, just making the change here isn't enough. This only controls the units in our drawing. It doesn't control some of the other things that are required in order to be drafting in a fully metric environment. I'm going to click OK. Let me show you what I mean. I'm just going to come up and click my plot icon just to bring up the plot dialog. I want to show you that right now our paper sizes are still measured in inches. So although we did change our units to metric, the drawing isn't entirely a metric environment. Let me close the plot style dialog. What I'm trying to say is if you want to draft in metric, you're better off starting with a metric template rather than the default. If we'd like to start using a metric template, we're going to come up to the File pull down and we'll select New. And in our Select Template dialog, we're going to come down and select the ACAD ISO template. Let me select this guy and we'll come down and click Open. I am now creating a new drawing based on the ACAD ISO template, and the ACAD ISO template happens to be metric. So let's check our units again. I'm going to go to Format. I'm going to come down to Units. Notice this guy is set to millimeters currently. Let me click OK to dismiss the dialog. And let's take a look at our plot one more time. I'm going to come up and click my plot icon. Notice now my paper is being measured in millimeters. So I am truly working in a metric environment now. Let me close this dialog. You may be thinking, I draft in metric quite frequently. Is there any way I can default to a metric template? Yes, you can. We're going to do that through our options. I'm going to go to my Tools pull down. We're going to make the assumption that we want to draft in metric all the time. So we'll come down and select Options. Remember, the Options dialog is where we go to change the way AutoCAD works. I'm going to come up to my Files tab and click, and I'm going to come down to the Template Settings area. I'll click the little plus to open that up, and I'm going to go to the area that's labeled Default Template File Name for QNew. Let me click the plus. I'm going to scroll this down just a little bit. This is the area where AutoCAD's looking for the default template when we launch AutoCAD. Right now it's using AutoCAD's standard default drawing. I'm going to highlight this guy and I'm going to click Browse. I want to point to a different startup drawing. Now that I've clicked Browse, AutoCAD's popped me out into my template folder. I'm going to select ACAD ISO. We'll click Open. I've just added that path to my Files tab, and at this point I can click OK. Let's close AutoCAD. Save changes, no. This means that from now on, when I go into my AutoCAD, it's going to default to the metric template. Notice once again I'm in my Drawing 1. Let me go to my Format pull down and let's check Units. Notice I have defaulted to the ACAD ISO template. Now let me hit Cancel. All right, one more thing. Maybe you work in metric for a couple weeks and you realize, I don't do metric as much as I thought I did. How can I take and switch AutoCAD back so we start using the standard default drawing? Let's return to Options. I'm going to go to Tools. We'll come down to Options. We'll go to the Files tab again. Once again, we'll come down to Template Settings. We'll go to Default Template File Name for QNew. We're going to grab this path that's pointing to the metric template. I'll just click on it to highlight it, and I'm going to come up and click Remove. Now I can click OK. And from now on, every time I launch AutoCAD, it's going to default to the standard imperial drafting environment. If you have a desire to draft using metric units, it's nice to know that AutoCAD can be configured to suit your needs. If you're an occasional metric drafter, you can simply choose the ACAD ISO template drawing when needed. For those of you who feel metric units are your way of life, AutoCAD can easily adapt to a default metric environment.